Let's see if we're going to be black screen or if we're actually going to smoothly transition into our live show on Twitch. Only time is going to tell. Oh, I actually see we have a visual. We are not black screen. We're not in the abyss tonight. So this is already an improvement over last night's OWL by the numbers. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 152, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch esports, see what's buzzing in this week's hot community topics, which there are a plethora of, all revolving around a certain thing of the Overwatch League. We'll reflect on OWL Stage 1 Week 5 and get you ready for the Stage 1 playoffs, which start tomorrow. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Edinar. And Ed, you know, it's been one of the more baffling weeks just due to some unnecessary poor planning by the league offices. So much so, in fact, that even the Overwatch League Commissioner, Nate Nanzer, can't make heads or tails of it. What has been going on? Like, it's too much.
I mean, I flipped the coin on whether I was going to come on the show tonight. And originally I saw it and it told me that I wasn't going to be on the show. Mm-hmm. But then I realized I don't know how to tell heads from tails. And I'm like, oh, I am going on the show tonight with Totem. So,
well, did your Twitter persona tweet it and then you also tried to call it in the air?
Oh, no, I did not try and do that. You know, I know I dropped the ball there.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite dropped the ball as bad as everyone else, but no, my week's been good. It's, you know, good fantasy week, kind of some good games, kind of like three good games
out of eight.
That's
a rough stretch.
And you know, I had a great time watching those. You know, been still playing a lot of Destiny. I did not get the Division 2. I'm not a Division 2 fan. So, you know, it's been interesting. It's getting warm up here, though. It's like there's no snow on the ground.
It's crazy. Like,
I know.
It's almost like spring this year. Actually, today is the first day.
Yeah, I think today is the first day of spring. Yeah. But, like, yeah, I'm like, you know, it's upper 40s. I'm not wearing coats outside to work anymore. You know, it's a glorious time. So, how's your week been?
I'm too busy typing in Twitch chat. My week's been pretty good. You know, there's, you know, a certain team that had like their biggest win ever that caused another kind of historic moment for this particular team, who you know you happen to be wearing a jersey for. I'm exhausted. I worked at 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. yesterday, went back at midnight after the podcast and the movie stream, and then worked until 8 o'clock this morning, and then I fell asleep for like 6 hours, and I did more podcast prep, and here I am right now. Outside of that, I too have been, you know, diving a little bit into Destiny 2. Much thanks to not only yourself, but Spider, and I just picked up the annual pass earlier, so I gotta do my 640, you know, bounties, and you know, we'll quickly get caught up. But it's been a good week, and it's been a very emotional week. A very, like, a bang your head on a wall kind of week, because there's just been a lot of stupidity in some retrospects, which we'll be getting into a lot in the hot community topics, because they're all kind of, like, intertwined with one another, and it just seemed to, like, progressively get worse as the day or two went along. But let's go ahead and jump into the news really quick. So first up, just general Overwatch news. We do have some new merchandise out there. I know Blizzard had posted, hey, we got a new Baptiste t-shirt on the Blizzard Gear store. You can find it out. They only have one. They have both the men's and women's version. And then outside of that, more importantly, we also have a new plush, which is none other than Wrecking Ball. So, you know, you better, you know, call Chengdu Hunters, get on the phone with Main, let them know, hey, go get your hamster. You know, he got buffed too, which we'll get into later. But the plush costs $25, and it's about like 10.5 inches. The only problem is, well, it's just the hamster Hammond and not the iconic ball that he's usually rolling around in. He is spear shape, but that doesn't really count. I don't think you're going to be able to roll him as well. But I'm sure there's going to be a number of people out there who are just going to go out, buy a hamster ball to throw this plush in, just so they can throw him and roll him around the house.
I mean, I hadn't thought of that. My first thought was, like, that's actually a pretty good idea. But my first thought was, when it was the Wrecking Ball plush, I'm like, but there's no ball.
Right.
Like, how can you... It's Hammond. Like, it's not Wrecking Ball.
Mm-hmm.
You take the ball out of Wrecking Ball, you just have Hammond.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, I don't get what's so hard with this.
So you're saying that it's labeled incorrectly.
It's false advertising.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they promised us one thing, but I guess the rule book was they didn't have to tell us about it.
Maybe they flipped the coin for it.
They flipped the coin. No, I mean, it's cool. It's a $25 plush. It's slightly overpriced, but not bad at all. You know, you're gonna see these everywhere at BlizzCon this year. Like, you're gonna see a lot of these. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of these. I also saw they have like a limited edition one.
Really?
Where you can get the Wrecking Ball art print for $60, a Wrecking Ball T-shirt for $25, and the Wrecking Ball keychain for $8. I'm sure they're all just Hammond and not the Wrecking Ball as well.
Oh yeah, just to further drive your point home.
Yes, exactly. But no, it's cute, it's adorable, it's a plush. You know, who doesn't love plushes? I mean, besides me.
All right, well, next up, we had a major balance patch that hit live servers this week. And of course, this is one that touched 19 different heroes in the game, tons of balance tweaks. And then if you kind of like add in the fact that, we have Hero 30 Baptiste, we got armor changes, we have bug fixes. So across the board, if you factor all of that in, this patch in itself impacted 26 of the game's 30 heroes on the Overwatch roster, which is so much more than what we are used to. And I know we covered this when it was on a PTR cycle, and it's important to note, like, this is really the first time since the PTR's inception that they've actually made changes while the stuff was still on the PTR and not just be like, oh, we're just gonna patch straight to live. So this is already an improvement, and maybe this is a sign of change for team number 4 moving forward. We can only hope. Maybe they're actually listening at this point, and then we could start to clean things up a little bit. Only time is going to tell. But Ed, there's so much going on. Let's just quickly do a rundown of everything that was included in this patch, because there's a lot. As I said, like, there's 19 balance tweaks. So we'll kind of divvy this up, and we could pass the baton along. So first up, obviously, hero number 30, Baptiste, is out. If you want to learn more about Baptiste, just head over to our YouTube channel. Spider released the 4-minute overview for hero number 30. Check that out. That was dropped earlier this afternoon.
With dad jokes and lameness, I guess.
As evident to the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
But moving on, looking at some of the armor changes, beam type damage was reduced by 20% when hidden armor. Dot effects are no longer mitigated by armor. We've been seeing damage boost now being applied when the projectile is fired rather than when it hits a target. They also took a look at knockbacks, so the knockback distance is now more consistent across the board. Heroes that are flying can now be knocked back and slowed. They also have some new sounds when you land a hit while you're damage boosted. And there's also a new sound when you land a hit, but it doesn't deal any damage. And then we got a slew of balance changes. So we have the Ana Nano Boost heal being reduced from 300 to 250. Doomfist got some buffs. Cooldown base, so uppercut cooldown was reduced from 7 seconds to 6 seconds. Seismic Slam cooldown was reduced from 7 seconds to 6 seconds. For Hanzo, the sonic arrow detection radius was increased from 7 meters to 9 meters. And then Junkrat, this is the one that they kind of tweaked during the cycle. The Junkrat frag launcher impact damage was increased from 40 to 60 initially, but on live it went from 40 to 50. And then he also increased the ultimate cost of Riptire by 10%. Now, that being said, there are a slew of other number changes that are probably going to be more impactful to the meta in itself and kind of flip things on its head. So why don't you take things over and talk about what they did with Lucio?
All right, so with Lucio, his speed boost amplification radius reduced from 70% to 50%. His speed boost effect reduced from 30% to 20%. His wall ride speed buff increased from 20 to 40%, and Soundwave now counts towards offensive assists. So yeah, that's huge nerf to the current GOATS meta. Mm-hmm. Next up, you have McCree. Fan the Hammer damage was reduced from 55 to 50, but Deadeye DPS increased from 275 to 550 after locking onto targets for 1.5 seconds. So, nerf the right click, massively buff the ult. So, Mei, her primary fire damage increased from 2.25 to 2.75, so 45 to 55 DPS. And then her ice wall health was reduced actually from 500 to 400. Then we had Moira, her biotic grasp hot duration increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, and total healing increased from 50 to 65. So it's a pretty big jump in healing for her. Orissa's fusion driver movement speed penalty while firing, so how fast she can move while she's firing, was reduced from 50% to 30%. And then Pharah's rocket launcher minimum explosion damage increased from 16.25 to 20. Let's see. We got Reaper healing received from dealing damage reduced from 50% to 40%. We got Soldier 76 pulse rifle damage increased from 19 to 20. Delay before you can fire the weapon after using sprint reduced from 0.5 seconds to 0.3, and Tactical Visor can now target Riptire and Immortality fields. Sombra's hack cooldown reduced by half when hacking a health pack. Not a big deal there. Symmetra primary fire ramps up 20% faster. Torbjorn's base health was increased by 50 armor, up to 250 max health, and overload armor gain reduced from 150 to 100. Let's see. Widowmaker's Infrasight now reveals enemy health bars and is canceled on death. Then Wrecking Ball, the actual Wrecking Ball, can now use his adaptive shield while in roll mode now.
Which is absolutely huge, especially for the competitive, Wrecking Ball players out there who have been known to already be playing that character in particular, when not that many people are. But outside of that, they also made some other changes to the 3-3 composition. So for Zarya, they were looking at the particle cannon. So her alternate fire with the explosion radius had changed to 2 meters regardless of energy level, rather than kind of like scale in based on what your energy level was.
That was another one they tweaked on the actual PTR, because it was, before the PTR, it was 2 to 4 meters, and then they changed it from 1 to 2, and then I think they just settled on 2.
Right. And then also, probably one of the more big changes, because this kind of impacts multiple people within the game itself, and that is with Zenyatta. So first up, they changed the Orb of Destruction damage. They buffed that from 46 to 48. But then the bigger change, they looked at the Orb of Discord effect, and they reduced that from 30% to 25%. So, you're going to be seeing a little bit less burst damage. It's going to affect really focus fire in the game, because, a lot of people are just using Discord Orb as whoever the target prioritization is on. So we have a slew of changes, 19 heroes touch overall, at least with balance tweaks, another 6 in regards to bug fixes. And there's just so much going on with this patch. And, it's really crazy to kind of think about the patch cycle and how this one in particular seems to kind of be balance tweak wise, 4 patches just bundled into one. Usually we're only seeing 3, maybe 4 heroes getting touched at a time. And then here it's just from top to bottom practically, which is very refreshing. And, there are definitely some changes where at the silver gold level, we're going to be seeing quite a bit of increase of Junkrat play and Moira play just because they are a little bit more prominent at those levels, but I expect to see even more now than what we were seeing before. And it's so hard to like figure out like, well, what meta shift are we going to see? What's going to be happening?
Exactly.
But we're kind of like entering a situation now where this is very exciting because I can see the meta go in any number of different ways. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see DPS heavy compositions and what that would mean for like what the support meta is going to be. I'm anxious to see where Baptiste is going to fit in all of that and how well or how terrible people are going to be using Immortality Field or his amplification matrix, because that's very positioning dependent. So who knows what to expect? It's going to be an interesting transitional period for all of us. But within this patch, like, what are you mostly looking forward to seeing just kind of like evolve out of these changes?
Well, I obviously want the death of goats. I'm very interested to see how Moira works out, because Moira is a very interesting healer that is good, but can be countered very easily. Like the orbs can be just eaten up by D.Va. So if you see less D.Va, you might see more Moira. You might see more of her out there just healing, output more. She could become the top healer in the game. We just don't know. I'm also very interested to see Doomfist. Doomfist having, 2 of your 3 abilities cooldowns reduced when in the right hands he's already kind of overpowered is kind of crazy. Symmetra, I'm a little worried about. Only reason being is we just keep buffing her, but we're buffing her against like the meta that was out there. Like you're buffing her against shields and stuff like that, and that's not where she's effective. She's more effective when it's not like, okay, let's go goats, so I want to see how she pans out with all these changes. If it does come a DPS meta, how strong is she going to be after 4 straight PTRs of buffing? And yeah, like I just want to see what is actually going to be played. Like your best bet right now is to just watch streams. Like watch, because a lot of the pros are streaming now because half the teams aren't in the playoffs. And they have a bye week. So they're going to be streaming more and more. Like I saw DeFran was streaming today.
Right.
Muma, Space, they're all streaming. So watch that because you're seeing high level play from these guys, and just look at the team comps that are out there.
You had to get high level play from them somewhere.
Yes. One thing Baptiste ult, it obviously increases the damage of any projectiles that go through it. Does that include a D.Va bomb? Like if you launch a D.Va bomb through it, can it out damage Zenyatta ult?
I honestly don't know if that works through it. I always think projectiles as more bullets.
But like any projectile that goes through it, is her mech technically considered a projectile? Because you are shooting it essentially.
I'm gonna say no, but we'll definitely look into that.
Spider, where's Spider? We need science.
Science. Yeah, where's the Mythbuster Overwatch when we need him at this point?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm interested to see how Baptiste actually plays out as well, because he could be amazing, or he could just be trash tier. Right. Like I would be surprised.
Like in Anna situation where we just don't see the character for quite some time.
Yeah, and then they buff, and then they're like, crap, you overbuffed. And then they nerf. So
the other thing I'm really curious about is, everyone knows the story behind the delete Brig movement. Do you feel like the agitation of the community is going to bleed into Baptiste because it is another support hero?
No. I don't think it is. The problem a lot of people had was with Big Ed is she was so overpowered at the beginning.
Which the dev team basically said, yeah, we effed up.
Like, and they just kept nerfing her and nerfing her and nerfing her. And Jeff even said in an interview, right now, outside goats, she's trash. Like, she is not good if you're not playing her in goats. She does like no damage. But the mentality everyone has is, I can be like front line doing damage with my shield. I'm like, no, you actually have to play her as a healer now. That's the only way you're going to get any form of effectiveness out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because without like actual comms and like working with your team, your stun is not going to be really that useful if your team doesn't take advantage of it, because you can't stun and kill anything now. It's just not going to happen. So you can stun and you can heal. That's it. Like, you're just not doing the damage you used to. Your ult isn't as good as it used to be.
Right.
Like, I actually think she will be the worst support player in the game. Now, this actual Baptiste, like, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Baptiste is someone who I think we could start seeing DPS players play.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Baptiste does have a gun. It's fairly decent. Like, the grenade for the healing,
except self-healing.
Yeah, except self-healing. But like someone like, and I hate to say this, pray to God Julian's not listening.
Oh God, don't do it.
Jake would not be the worst Baptiste.
But he is the worst Brigitte.
Yes. But like, if you think about it, Baptiste's kit is it's fairly close to a Junkrat. Like, with the healing, with the grenades, it's got the same projectiles.
Or Soldier, because a lot of players do use Soldier like primary fire as burst.
Yeah, so you have
yes.
You have the primary fire from Baptiste, then you have the grenades, which takes a lot of work on the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the biggest thing, is the trajectory with Junkrat. And if you're really good with Junkrat and his trajectory, then you will be good with Baptiste's healing. The only thing you really have to work on then is use of the immortality field, calling that stuff out. Well, I don't think Jake is going to have a problem with calling stuff out. Like, so he could be switching over to that, or you could start seeing some damage dealers becoming Baptiste mains now for that reason in the Overwatch League. I mean, we even saw it a little in Stage 1. I think we saw Linkser on Ana.
Yeah,
I think Architect was on Ana. Like, every once in a while, you would see a DPS player on Ana.
Well, here's the thing, Ed. We're in a meta where DPS players were forced to play support. There is a chance that maybe they don't want to go through a similar thing and then just be in jail the entire time. That being said, though, there are support players out there who had transitioned from DPS in the past that became Lucio players, but they always kind of have that pocket Soldier 76 player. And for those Lucio players, Baptiste seems to be a natural fit with this hero.
Yeah, and it could definitely turn into something where you have like a Mercy, and then you have like a 1.5 healer.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not pumping out as much healing as like a Zenyatta would, but you could be pumping out a decent amount of damage to account for a half a DPS and a half a healer, and then kind of get the best of both worlds. Kind of like how Baguette used to be. Like, she used to pump out a lot of damage, pump out decent heals, and that's why she was so good. He could fall under that same situation. I do feel, though, that his ultimate is rather weak.
Yeah, it relies heavily on situational awareness and just positioning, because I'm really worried with his ult in particular of it just being like Symmetra's teleporter, where we're just not seeing the full usage out of it.
Mhm.
So when you compare it to like some of the other support ultimates in the game, it's not going to be as game changing. But that being said, on the higher end, it is going to help solidify, a first kill a lot better than what you normally would be. So I feel like there are going to be two sides of that coin.
Yeah, it's just with the ult, it's so easily avoidable. Like if you just have height and range and all that stuff, like if you're not running a static tank of like an Orisa or Rhine or something like that pushing slowly forward, and if you have like a Winston, D.Va, Wrecking Ball, that kind of ult from Baptiste is not going to be as effective, even remotely, because you don't have like set targets. I mean, the most effective way it's probably going to be used is thrown right in front of a Widowmaker. And then just have the Widowmaker try and get some massive headshots through it or body shots or whatever and take down players that way. That I could see being super effective.
Moving on, though, we do have the Overwatch cosplay battle entering the final stage, and it's now up to the public to vote for their favorite cosplay. So this was a cosplay competition that features teams representing 6 different European countries. Each team consists of 3 different cosplayers, all that kind of have like their own, unique thing that they're going to bring to the team. And we are going to have like the winner being selected by an official jury, Blizzard artists as well as cosplay professionals, but the fans are also able to vote for a community favorite winner. So, you have Team France, you got the United Kingdom, Russia, Spain, Germany, and Italy all competing in this. And then I know voting is open until the 24th, with the winners being announced on the 26th. So now I thought, like, this isn't something I even knew about. I just found it randomly, just browsing the internet. And, we got to see a lot of these countries kind of doing like very specific skins. Russia kind of like just did the base D.Va skin, which included the mech, but you have like the Magni Torbjorn, the Forest Spirit Orisa, Dragon Symmetra, Blackwatch Genji was another one, as well as the Baihu Genji skin as well. And I have to say, like, these look so good, but you kind of have to dock Italy some points because with the Blackwatch Genji, they didn't quite expose everything, just like the actual skin. Because Blizzard and Team 4, for whatever reason, has this thing about exposed nipples, and I don't know what that has been like since the game's inception, but it just always seems to be the case, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I like going through them, and I know a lot of people are gonna love the D.Va one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Well, here's the problem, Ed. Basically, anyone can cosplay as a D.Va.
Exactly. Like that's my point. Exactly. They're not cosplaying. They built a mech that you can go into. Like it's great building, but the cosplay of D.Va is not what I would expect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, they did the best of building an exoskeleton. But like, I don't know. My favorite is actually the United Kingdom, the Forest Spirit Orisa. That was my favorite out of all of them. But yeah, I don't know. It would be cool. I had no idea about this until you mentioned it to me. I'm like, what is going on?
Right.
So this is super cool.
So
I'm excited to see who wins it all.
Speaking of cosplay, at BlizzCon, everyone needs to do this. Everyone needs to buy like a hamster onesie. Grab one of those rolling balls. just jump in there and just go at it. Just roll around.
Yes, just roll around. That's all you got to do. Get a hamster outfit, buy one of those inflatable balls, and then just roll around BlizzCon and be like, I'm cosplaying.
I'm going to give a bad idea.
Somebody has to do that now. And then, like, when they get set, they can poke their head out of the top. Be like, see, I'm Hammond.
All right, well, anyways, let's go ahead and jump into this week's hot community topics, which is the endless Overwatch League clusterfuck that was tiebreaker debacles this past week. And oh my god,
Mark it.
I'm not marking it.
You swore this time, and it wasn't me.
I don't care. No one cares about that. So, I have so many thoughts about this. So let's just do a quick TLDR or TLDW in this case. Because, we are on Twitch. Okay, so for starters, we have very unclear tiebreaker rules. We had 2 different ties that needed to be determined for who gets the 3rd and 4th seed, as well as the 6th and 7th seed. So you had San Francisco Shock and Seoul Dynasty on the lower end of that. And you also had Philadelphia Fusion and Toronto Defiant. Okay, so how are we going to determine these tiebreakers? Well, the Shock and the Dynasty decided to, we're going to settle it by playing the standard game. Except, well, for one, Shock were the only team actually opting for a match. Seoul didn't want to have the match. They would rather done the coin flip. And what happens? Seoul ends up having to play anyway. So what do? They play their B squad. And not only that, but this was a non-broadcasted match, which was casted, like shoutcasted by Uber and Mr. X. And you had the San Francisco Shock and the Overwatch League tweeting during the decider game and just kind of like poking fun about the situation because we're not able to actually see it. We also had Fusion and Defiant settling theirs via a coin flip. And then you had Nate Nancer, the OWL commissioner himself, not knowing the difference between heads and tails on the coin flip and everything that transpired with that. It's just like, these are things that just should not happen. You can look back and look at other tournaments, look at other leagues, things like that. And it's so hard to excuse a lot of these mistakes. These things need to be settled before the start of the season rather than just kind of making it up as we go along, because it just looks bad in regards to the league image in itself. And of course, they mentioned, hey, we're going to be making some changes to the tiebreakers. What those are going to be, we still do not know. We don't have the details on that, much like we didn't have the details.
Rock, paper, scissors, prior. Best of 3. Calling it now. Rock, paper, scissors.
Right. But at the end of the day, it was just one thing after another, and the things just kept building and building, and it just got to the point where it just tarnishes the league reputation at this point. There's no other way to look at it.
It's bad. This was a shit show from the get-go. The fact that 3 days before the playoffs started, teams didn't know who they were going to play. And then they quote the rule book that nobody's effing seen, and one out of the four teams wants to play in a match. The other 3 don't. So that forces one of the teams who doesn't want to play in it into playing it because they don't want the pressure of that right before the playoffs. Plus, it's an extra match they shouldn't have to play because Blizzard is stupid. And then they go through all of this of, hey, we're going to bring them on stage, on the Blizzard Arena stage. We're going to have shoutcasters casting the match, but we're not going to actually show the match to anyone. And so Shock fans are pissed. Seoul fans are pissed. Most other fans are just annoyed. They couldn't have... I don't think there's a scenario where they could have handled it worse than they actually did. I'm literally drawing a blank on what they could have done worse. And it's one of those things where if that's the case, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. If you don't see a possible tie coming into effect when you only play 5 weeks, you're an idiot. You need to have these rules in place. You changed around the entire playoffs. You knew it was possible that there was going to be a tie. You 100% knew it was possible. Hell, it's likely there's going to be a tie. And there's going to be ties probably in every stage. Now, they're going to change it for next stage. We don't know what it is, but personally, I have zero faith that they're going to do it right. But oh, God. And the fact that they were tweeting out, mocking the fans about it, is the part that gets me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not only do they know that they made horrible decisions, they're now mocking the fan base because they can't watch it. Because you guys don't know how to set up tiebreakers. Like, I lost a lot of faith in the Overwatch League this week because of this scenario.
Yeah, and like even if you like look back at how are tiebreakers going to be decided, at least according to the rule book, which obviously the rulebook that we have isn't necessarily the full drawn out rulebook, so who knows what even like the teams actually know about it. But a lot of their tiebreakers consist of head to head, and in such a shortened season, chances are you're either A, not going to be facing that team that stage, so that tiebreaker wouldn't even come into effect, or B, you might face them 2 times throughout the year in 2 completely different metas, 2 different stages, because you're not always going to be having a Vancouver Titans like Guangzhou Charge situation where those teams did play each other twice, but those were 2 completely different records. So just as an example, and they go by that, and then they're like, okay, let's just go by map differential. Well, map differential was tied in pretty much every situation in that case.
And then
you factor in, like, for season playoffs, they're like, okay, well, we're just going to do basically the same thing. We're just not going to include the stage playoffs as well. And it's just like, I don't know of another situation where a tournament organizer hasn't been clear-cut with a tiebreaker situation. And it's just completely mishandled. Like, the best thing for you to do is say, hey, we have such an engaging community. Let's put this information out there. Let's get feedback. If adjustments need to be made, let's release it like 2 weeks before the start of the season. If the community doesn't like what they're seeing, or if they feel like some adjustments need to be made to make for something that's either easier to understand or something that's better suited for the players and the teams, then let's go ahead and let's grab the bull by the horns and let's just get ahead on it rather than just being like waltzing through as we kind of go along. Because one, like in Seoul's case, I don't blame them for not wanting to play that tiebreaker game. Either way, one of those teams is going to get the worst end of the draw, just because as the 7th seed, you were going to go up against the number 2 seed, who in this case is NYXL, and we're one of 2 undefeated teams this stage. And you want to be able to spend whatever amount of time on actually preparing for a match. And you don't want to put your focus elsewhere. And on top of that, too, like with that decision match, between Dynasty and the Shock, there's been a lot of reports that they actually recorded the game. They just didn't broadcast it. So, like, is that something that they're just going to release, like, post-playoffs? Is that just going to be, like, lost in the archives? What's going to go on with the actual footage that they did? And why even cast it? Like, it's just... I don't know what to make of the situation, just outside of the fact that I haven't felt this baffled.
Like, I think the most baffling thing to me about this whole tiebreaker situation that went down was that they gave the team multiple options.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you're a boss and there's something that's going to affect all the teams, you're not like, well, you each get to choose how you want to handle it.
Right.
No, that's not how it works.
Right. Stick to the rule book, which states, hey, we're doing a tiebreaker match, or just don't do it at all. Either
go with coin flip for both,
right, one or the other.
Matches for both. One of the two. Don't be like, hey, if you two want to flip a coin and not play, you can. Otherwise, you get to play a match. No, that's not how it works. have flipping balls and make a decision. Like, coin flip, show match. I would have been fine if they would have just said it's going to be a coin flip or they're going to play a match. But no, these 3 teams decided to flip a coin. This one person wanted to play a match. And now everything's all screwed up, and they're not going to show the shock dynasty match at all. I think they want to sweep this under the rug as quickly as possible.
They showed it just in the form of a black page or black tweet from the shock.
Yeah. They just want to get rid of this, move on, and hope we forget about it, which we probably will in like a week or two. But at this exact moment, I all I can do is shake my head at them.
Absolutely. So rather than just kicking the league while it's down, let's go ahead and move on. I don't want to keep raging. So let's talk.
Oh no, we're going to keep raging, just on different subjects.
So this is also something that I know. It's one of those things. Like, I'm honestly not surprised. I'm just severely disappointed. So Nate Nanzer, the Overwatch League commissioner himself, before the whole coin flip flub, was at South by Southwest. He was there to discuss the Overwatch League with one of the ESPN reporters on one of the panels. And Nate Nanzer confirmed that the 2020 season is going to be played in the franchise's home cities. Now, teams are going to be playing within their conference more than outside of it. They'll have travel being based on region to help ease with jet lag. And I know Jacob Wolf reported that the teams are going to be in charge of the venues, ticket sales, associated fees, with the league remaining responsible for the broadcasting of the games. Now, outside of that, we also found out from the Sports Business Journal's Ben Fisher that there are no plans of expanding before then. With, obviously 2020 season, we'll have games in 19 different cities. Obviously, it's not 20 because, LA kind of has 2 teams. If you count the Valiant. I don't know if you would after stage 1. But just as a reminder, this year we do get road games. There's only going to be 3. You'll have the Dallas Fuel, Atlanta Reign, LA Valiant serving as hosts this year. And before we even gripe about the no expansion, I will note, like, with the teams in charge of, the venues, the tickets, and all of that, this is a perfect opportunity to be like, hey, NYXL, you have the 5 Deadly Venoms crew who has kind of been doing all this event planning for 2 years already. Bring them over. Have them at the front of this, because you want that sort of community involvement, and they're already so established in that market. Like, I want to see them kind of pass the baton to them so they can really have a crack at it. And, it's going to be beneficial for both parties. And we've been seeing a ton of watch parties pop up, a bunch of fan groups, some that are larger than others. But the community engagement across the board has been very strong. And I can't think of a better way to kind of like handle that situation than by bringing on people that have really been at the forefront of community engagement as a whole for your team.
Yeah, it's would be smart of these teams to do something like that, because like I know Atlanta is another one where they have a massive presence in Atlanta. Not Slambo though. He's not allowed to be there that we know of.
He's too busy playing volleyball in suits.
Exactly. But even teams like Florida, they have a big following down in Florida.
Yeah, they have the Chaos Crew, I think it is.
Yeah, the Chaos Crew. The only thing is where in Florida? That's an honest question.
Yeah, because wasn't it
every other place has
they were saying city. Miami in season 1, and then they went with Florida.
And honestly, you want to know why? ESPN. They have an arena in Orlando. So the Mayhem could have like a home already, but they're the only ones that like don't have a city behind it. It's just like a state. All right, what are you gonna do? Well, you have the entire state to choose from. Just don't choose the middle because of the swamp people. And anyone who lives in Florida will agree with me. Middle of the state.
The only thing I can think of when someone says swamp people is Victor Crowley from Hatchet.
Just go on the Reddit just Google.
You can Google anything from Florida. Any weird crap that happens usually comes out of Florida.
Yeah, it always starts with a Florida man.
And hacked another human being, you know.
Now, this is going to be interesting because a lot of these places don't have stadiums already built.
Mm-hmm.
So either A, they're going to have to build their own, which in theory is fine, but you have to have other uses for it. Like, I'm sorry, the Overwatch League isn't big enough to fund a stadium and only have the Overwatch League play there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna happen. So a lot of these places will, if they build it, they have to build it with other things already in place that will be played there. Or in certain situations like Florida, they could use the esports arena at Disney World. Or wherever it is in Orlando. LA can use the Blizzard Arena. I'm assuming they will, because I don't think they're going to just have the Blizzard Arena go empty.
Yeah, like the Valiant, I think, had like one of the Hollywood theaters or something.
Yeah, and I mean Dallas already has a place to play. You know, I think Houston does too. So you're gonna definitely see existing places already being used, and you're gonna see new ones built. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle all this, like who gets the biggest ones. Because like New York could honestly play. There's so many places they could play. I mean, they're not going to play they're not going to play the Barclays Center as their home matches. But I mean, if you think about it, you could start getting small arenas. Like think college basketball.
Right.
Like college basketball arenas, like think that size. Now, granted, you're not going to sell them out or anything like that, but you could tag along with a college team or a college arena and go in there. Hockey arenas, another one. Not massive amounts of seating and places like that.
Yeah, but do you feel like from an entry level they're going to start with that skill rather than going with something that has like 1,000 or under seating? Like, because like even like the Blizzard Arena itself only holds like what 400 or 500 people, something like that.
I see. The thing is why not build it to have more people? Because if it grows in 5 years, then you have to build again.
I guess my point is more we don't know what the demand is going to be in every market.
I get that.
You'd rather have the space and not have enough.
Yeah, like I believe it's in DC. I want to say it's in DC, and please don't quote me on this, anyone, because I'm probably wrong and I'll get told about it.
It's okay. Spider will correct you.
Yes, but I believe in DC they have kind of like the WNBA team and like esports arena like combined into one. Like it's not a massive arena by any stretch of the imagination, but I think like it's WNBA and then they have esports events there to kind of offset, you know, the WNBA.
Right.
Something like that could be, you know, could be used. The tricky thing is going to be the Chinese teams and Seoul. And how they do. They really need to do the schedule well.
Right.
For this to work out. Like, really well.
Yeah, I do see Hippo asking in chat, is it basically 20 cities in 20 weeks? The details on this are not out there. We don't know exactly how it's going to work. Now, something to factor in, like, let's say they're doing a bunch of travel in. You have to factor in the fact that, one, they have to, you know, get hotels for all the players, all the staffs, broadcasters, all of that. But I don't think it's going to be a situation where you're going to have one game in Houston, one game in Dallas, one game in LA, one game, X city in one particular day, because the production cost of that is just going to be so significant.
Yep. And then you got to also think, as fans of the LA teams, San Francisco, Vancouver, and Dallas are the ones in the Atlantic Division. I think it's Pacific Division. Those are the ones tied with Chinese teams. You, in theory, will go 3 weeks without having a home game for them, because if let's say, for instance, Dallas goes over there, they'll probably play the Hunters and the Charge 1 week. The next week they'll play the Spark and go down to Seoul, and then fly back, and then have a week off to get over jet lag, and then they'll probably play more teams around the U.S.
Right.
Probably San Francisco, stuff like that. That is something that is going to happen. Like, a team is not going to fly over to China for 1 week, then fly back.
Mm-hmm.
That just makes no sense. So it will be tricky. It can be done. I'm excited for it. Somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a huge undertaking.
Huge.
The logistics can be an absolute nightmare. Just like Hippo was mentioned, Paris and London, it's going to be more of a nightmare for them over more so the like Shanghai, Chengdu, Guangzhou. So,
honestly, I would not be surprised if they rearrange the divisions and they put Paris and London in with Guangzhou and instead of maybe Dallas and Vancouver or something like that, just for travel sakes.
Right.
But who knows how it's going to happen and what the deal's going to be, and how much time is needed for jet lag?
Right. And how often do you want to travel too? That's the other aspect of it.
That's one thing. You're going to be traveling a lot. But do you need 3 days jet lag to get over jet lag, getting there, 3 days back? Something like that. I don't know. Some teams are going to get screwed by this. I just know it. But just know every team will eventually get screwed over by it.
Yeah. And
except for certain Chicago teams.
Yeah, and really when I saw this article, that was really my first reaction. I was like, oh, that means we're gonna have to wait till 2021. And my heart just sank, because you and I both have been really hoping, hey, season 3 is gonna be the time. We're gonna get a Chicago team, go from there. We'll have something actually local to us, as opposed to Toronto local, as someone in the Midwest, which isn't true at all. That's
nope, not cheering for Toronto.
But at the end of the day, I completely understand it, just due to the logistics and how big of a set this is, because there is not another esports that does this. Overwatch League is kind of its own entity. That being said, it doesn't make me feel any less gutted, but this is such a ambitious task at hand. I'm willing to accept it, but I'm still going to feel a little bit bitter about the fact that, we have to hold out that much longer. So hopefully, at the end of the day, what this is going to mean is, hey, Midwest, the finals are going to be there this year, hopefully.
I mean, that would be nice to have them on in the Midwest. Have them at the Staples, not the Staples. What is the name of the stadium where the Bulls play? Whatever. Some arena down in Chicago would be
United Center.
United Center. It's just, everyone assumed Chicago was going to get a team.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have been probably the 21st team. If they added one more team, Chicago was the next most likely. But here we are, We don't have a local team for us to shill for. Little upset about it because they really have no one in the Midwest for teams to cheer for. Now, people in Europe have a gripe because they only have 2 teams. China has 3 teams. Seoul could probably use another team. Australia has nothing. Brazil has nothing. But here's the thing, and this is going to come across bad. This is generally it's an American esport. Like, it started in LA. The majority of the viewers outside of China are in the United States or in Canada. And you have to realize that if you have more teams in your biggest viewership base,
right,
you're going to get more viewership. They could add a team in Brazil. Would a team in Brazil bring in more viewership than a team in Chicago? Mm-hmm. You have to weigh those. But it does look like we're going to have to wait till 2021, mm-hmm. Which sucks because there's no guarantee in 2021 that they will actually, be a Chicago team.
Right.
We're just kind of hoping at this point. Like, I honestly just want a team I can wholeheartedly cheer for. Mm-hmm. And there's not one of those teams. Like, there's 3 teams I really like. I have the Spark, I have Seoul, and the Chengdu Hunters. Like, those 3 teams I really enjoy. Vancouver Titans, too. Titans, right. So 4. Like, I want one team I could wholeheartedly get. Like, the way Bob gets behind Dallas, I want to get that way behind a Chicago team. And it just sucks that knowing that it's not going to happen. And it was already confirmed this far in advance. So it's like there's no hope for us. So it sucks because we would have been the official podcast of that team. I would have contacted them every single day until they agreed to it. Mm-hmm. But, it is what it is. So we'll move on.
Begrudgingly.
So.
Well, what else is moving on? Plans for academy teams. We got a couple of the Chinese teams saying, hey, we're going to enter China. So we got Hangzhou Spark as well as the Guangzhou academy team. So Hangzhou Spark, they were up first. They will be competing under Bilibili Gaming in Contenders China with a roster consisting of Shai, Yakumo, Over, Zijin, Mika, Coldus, and Winter. Now, a lot of this roster is built around the core from Flag Gaming, who had a place in the top 4 in Contenders China Season 2 this past year, as well as second. They were the runners-up in Season 3. You also have a couple of members that have been on the Dragons Academy team, which is Team CC, since their inception, that being Zijin and Yakumo. And then Winter was on Flag Gaming's B team or sister team, however you want to label it, because you can really do either, to be honest. But you have someone like Shai, who has been on the Chinese World Cup team, has been one of the standout players. And this is Billy's second venture into esports, because they also do operate a League of Legends teams. So, as an avid Spark follower, Ed, is this going to be something you're going to be keeping an eye on just because of the affiliation to the Hangzhou Spark? Or is this going to be something that you're just kind of like going to be ignoring for now and maybe just looking into a little bit more if there are any call-ups later on?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't have time to watch Chinese contenders. Mm-hmm. Like, between 2 podcasts, the actual Overwatch League, Fantasy Dominance,
yeah, your golf. Yeah, man, it's...
Hey. My fantasy golf team is doing well, and so is my fantasy Overwatch League teams. So, shush, Mr. 0-5.
That's only one league, and I don't really count that league. That's
okay. Yeah, sure.
I'm pulling my my spider strat in that one.
Okay, so you're blaming Spider. All right, fair enough. No, but I am crazy excited for Shai. Mm-hmm. I really like Shai. Um, you know, he's definitely the biggest name on this roster.
Absolutely.
It will be. I think he's from LGD Gaming, correct? I think he was from LGD.
Yeah, in the past, yeah.
Previously. So it will be interesting. Now, Shy, let me just look real quick. I had it up. He turns 18 in October. So, all right, so he won't be called up. But, hey, they have other ways to call it up. But, like, the Spark, while they have weaknesses, I don't think they have glaring weaknesses. Like, so I don't know if one of these is going to be like the savior for them. You're not calling up like a Nene, a Flower, or, when Alarm gets called up or called up to a different team, because I don't feel Alarm is going to be called up to the Fusion. Like, it's not one of those game-changing call-ups, but this should be a good team, especially with the other Overwatch League teams announcing academy teams for them to compete against.
Right. All right, well, moving on, let's talk a little bit about the Guangzhou Charge's academy team. And much like their main roster, this is a mixed nationality roster. So there's a 7-man roster with a 2-man coaching staff. You have 6 different nationalities involved with this team. And you have a lot of players that are on a 2-way contract. So you have Nero, Rise, and Only Wish all on 2-way contracts. And the roster consists of Nero and Mui on DPS. You've got MG and Tizzy for your tank line. Then you have 3 supports on the back line with Rise, Sentry, and Only Wish. Now we got a couple of familiar names. MG was the off tank for the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons last year. You have Nero, who was a pretty well-respected name in Contenders. And you have Cuddles, who was with the LA Valiant last year, Stage 1, who had left them as their head coach. And then Kant had been a player on Maki Esports, which is a very respectable Contender-specific team this past year in Season 1. And then he was also on the Chinese Taipei/Taiwanese World Cup team, whichever you want to go by, because I know they label it different things practically every time here this past year, and that's his transition into a coaching role. And I have to say, like, I'm not really surprised to see this sort of roster from this team, because you look at the Guangzhou Charge and their main roster, and they definitely have one of the more Frankenstein nationality type teams. And I have to say, now, you and I have really been keeping an eye on this team, and a lot of the Chinese teams, if you look at our power rankings, are all in the same guard. And it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to keep that sort of mentality when it comes to the roster build-in. Because this is a pretty clear indication that it seems like at the end of the day, they're not going to have any sort of nationality kind of dictate the direction of it. They're always going to feel like they're going to be taking the best across the world rather than a specific region.
Yeah, I mean, this is smart by them, because their actual the Charge, the Gatorade team, is a mixed team, and you can't really have a Contenders team that's all Chinese or all Korean or something like that when you have a mixed team like on your main roster. Like, you need to be able to do if you want these people to be called up onto your main roster, they need to be used to different nationalities, different languages, different speaking, stuff like that. So this is very smart on their part. They do have a good team. Like you said, Mui, Nero, Tizzy for Spitfire, played for XL2 Academy. Like, it's a good team and should do.
One of the booted Koreans.
Well,
they replaced with another Korean.
Yeah. Well, Tizzy got booted off 2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
So got booted off the Spitfire along with Fissure. Just saying. Sometimes the Spitfire don't make the best decisions. And then he went to XL2 and then got kicked off for not being Korean, be replaced by Korean. Like they have a good team. They should do well. Cuddles, I always like Cuddles. Okay, that came out weird. Awkward. But yeah, it should be fun. I don't know if any of these will. I wouldn't take any of these players in place of anyone on the main roster, but they could go for a Boston Uprising route, call them up, or trade somebody on their active roster, call up somebody like Nero, somebody like Tizzy, somebody like Mui, to replace somebody and try and go that route. So who knows? Maybe they're geniuses. Possibly. Probably.
That might be. Well, moving on, we do have some merchandise update in regards to what jerseys are selling. This is straight from Fanatics, who revealed what have been the fastest move-in merchandise here since the end of January. And much to no one's surprise, at the helm of this is Dafran, Atlanta Reign, who's really, ever since the jerseys came out, Dafran has been the top-selling jersey. I know, the last time I got a jersey report, it kind of included player jerseys as well as just home and away jerseys, base jerseys as well as the player ones. And this one is player specific. So they released the top 7. So also on this list, you have Jonak, Sherfor, Gushue, Gagiri, Carpe, and Poco. Now that being said, Ed, are there really any surprises to you in this top 7, whether it is a name that's on this list or maybe a name that is left off of the list that you thought might be moving a bit more?
Well, I find it funny that 2 of the 5 are not starters, in Sherfor and Gaguri. Your number 1, Dafran, has the worst jersey to buy in the Overwatch League store. Jonak makes it's no surprise to me. Gushue is a surprise. Just because, I think Spider put it best.
You got the totem bump.
Yeah, totem health. We've been talking about Gushue since the World Cup. Nobody else has. Nobody else has been talking about Gushue for as long as we have. And he wasn't even the starting tank for the first 2 weeks. It's not like he came in and dominated. The season started and he was on the bench. And then he came in and he didn't light the world on fire. He did okay. So the Carpe and Poco, sure, I'm fine with that. A couple that I'm surprised are not on there. Custa.
Okay.
I'm a little surprised at Custa.
Even though he's not playing.
Jake. Jake is one I could see that could be on there. Maybe Sebayobi or Pine.
More bench players.
Yeah, some Fissure or Ray Jeong. Those are 2 iconic players from Seoul, but I don't know. What about you? Who do you think should be on there?
I'm going to go with a very selfish answer. Bumper, absolutely. Bumper was kind of the big surprise, and I think the other one that really came to mind for me was Muma. Just because, out of most of the Atlas players outside of Jake, Muma does have a lot of popularity and is one of the more prominent streamers as well. But really, Gushue being on there caught me by surprise because, I know he kind of has a following, but he didn't start at the start of the season. He hasn't been playing for the entirety of the stage. And I wonder how much of that was built from his World Cup performance and how much of that has been since taking over as a main tank over No Smite for the Hangzhou Spark. I don't know. One way or another, though, I'm happy to see that he is on there, and it just comes to show that people are buying into the hype behind him.
Yeah, I'm contemplating. I've actually talked to you about this. I'm going to be buying a new jersey, a 3rd jersey, because I already have my Fissure and I already have my Gatsby jersey. I'm torn between Bumper and Jinmu. Like, I don't know which one to buy. So I better decide who I'm going to cheer for from here on out because we don't have a Chicago team real quick. So that's one thing I have to decide is what team do I want to cheer for, and then kind of get behind them. Because if it's the Spark, then maybe I get a Gushue jersey or, something like that. But we shall see. It will be interesting to see I hope they update us on who sells the most, like after each stage, let's say. Right.
Because if there's any adjustments like stage to stage based on playtime or what the meta is, things like that.
Yeah, like I could see
well someone is doing as well.
Yeah, like I was just about to say, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if by stage 2, like Violet or Izayaki are up there. Because they kind of came out of nowhere. Happy. Who doesn't want a jersey that says Happy on it? It's just it will be interesting to see how it goes after stage 2.
Yeah, my only other note about this particular topic is I was a little surprised that 5 of the 7 names on here were players from Season 1. Primarily just due to the fact that there really aren't that many changes when it comes to the actual jersey design compared to what we got last year. So that did kind of catch me by surprise. So I was expecting, at least 3 or 4 names to probably be new players to the Overwatch League. But moving forward, we do have a new sign-in, which is pretty interesting, and that is for the now not winless Washington Justice, who have acquired main support Arc from the New York Excelsior. So Arc is going to be joining head coach Wizard Hyun and Giannis on the Washington Justice. And I know during the offseason, there was a lot of talk about Arc was always supposed to be part of that deal with New York. And there were budget cuts, whatever. Maybe the asking price was too high for Arc. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe something has changed since then. And Washington suddenly has all of this money to spend. I don't know what the situation is. But Arc is going to be a pretty big sign-in for this team. And it's important to note, like, Arc, who's been on NYXL, hasn't really been seeing a ton of playtime. New York Excelsior have been playing Animo on that main support role throughout pretty much the vast majority of the maps that they've been playing. And you have Washington's support line, who has Phosix, they have Guido, they have Hayanu, who is also another main support. And I have to say, like, I don't quite know what to make of the fact that now this team has 3 main support players on this roster. And that, to me, is one of the biggest issues that I have, outside of the fact that you kind of, like, look at the support line. Phosix, I think's been doing okay. He's known as a shot caller, but he doesn't actually shot call on this team. You have Hayanu, who hasn't even really played. Arc, who doesn't really delve too much into Lucio, or at least we haven't seen it anytime lately, who's been known to be more of a Mercy player. And it's so hard to gauge, like, what he's going to be playing, if this means Phosix is just going to be sat and right at the bench with Hayanu, or if they're going to have Phosix shift over to flex support that he played in the past, and then they'll just bench Guido. I don't know what to make of it, but what I do know is Arc is a great player. He does not die. I mean, we've labeled him time and time again Arc the Undying. His stats are usually always up there with the best main supports in the league. And his English is definitely the best out of any of the Korean players, because he's basically just been the translator for New York Excelsior. And on a mixed roster, that is going to be an absolutely massive get for Washington Justice. So this is a pretty big get, but I'm not going to say, like, Washington Justice is out of the woods, so to speak. They're still going to be kind of like 15 to 20 for a little bit more time. But hey, they bumped up a couple spots this past week because, they actually won a game. But it seems like slowly but surely we're seeing increments of improvement from this team. And with Arc kind of leading the way alongside Giannis, I'm expecting to see a little bit more out of the Justice moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I love this move. I thought it was brilliant by the Justice. Perrin, Arc, and Guido actually make them have a viable support team. Like, actually, probably top 10 support duos in my mind between those two. Like, if it was a 2-2-2 meta, Arc and Guido would be a top 10 support team. The problem, though, with Washington is they have a bottom 3 tank lineup and bottom 3 DPS team. Like, I sure, their support's fine for their team, but with Janus and Sansan, you're not winning games with that tank line. And then, you have Otto, Corey, and Stratus. Corey and Otto can play well. They can. They can pop off. And in certain maps, they could look like a top 5 DPS pairing. But you go from top 5 and then the next map to 20th, the worst DPS combo. Like, they're both very inconsistent. And they just need to improve everything else now. So I think they're set on support. I think they got who they want to. Guido, I think, has been a pleasant surprise for them.
He's been doing better than what he was doing on the Dynasty this past year, for sure.
Yes, he was. He's definitely been a pleasant surprise for them, especially fantasy-wise. Jesus, he had a good week.
Oh, last week was an anomaly. It also helps when you.
Well, I mean, I started him 2 weeks in a row, actually. And the week before that, he had 180 points in one match. He only played one match. And he had 180 points. So, like, he even had a good week 2 weeks ago. So he's putting out the fantasy numbers at least. But, yeah, you say they're bottom 15 to 20 range. I don't think this move bumps them up higher than 18. Like, they're still in the 18 to 20 range with the Valiant and the Florida Mayhem. The only team I think that they could probably surpass is Paris. Because Paris is not good. That team's in shambles right now. So, like, they could, in theory, pass them. But, yeah.
To be fair, really quick, I do want to note, Paris, I think it was LA Valiants and Washington all had the same map wins. I know it was like 3 teams that were near the bottom that all had the same map wins. And that was, for a team that we figured would be pretty good in the 3-3 meta, regardless of their strength of schedule, right?
Yeah.
That baffles my mind.
Well, all right, here's the thing. Washington Justice got a map win off of New York Excelsior because of the tire on Horizon Lunar Colony. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers that map, but, like, Libero went up to Farah Barrage, the entire Justice team, and the flipping tire on point A got in the way and killed them. Like, the Justice didn't win that map.
I mean, that's why tire costs 10% more for the ult charge.
Exactly. So yes, the swinging tire won that map for the Justice, not the actual Washington Justice. Like, I don't know. They're a team to watch, but I don't think they're going to do anything until they get better tank and better DPS play. They're going to be this year's Florida Mayhem. They're going to squeak out wins like 1 out of every 10 matches.
Well, I won't go as far as saying that, because you know who this year's Florida Mayhem are? The Florida Mayhem.
Yes.
That hasn't changed.
But, like, they're gonna get, like, a surprise win. Like, I mean, even the Florida Mayhem beat the Fusion? Yeah, they beat the Fusion this stage. Like, what? No. Like, they're going to get win every once in a while, but it means nothing because the team's bad.
Right.
So, but the Arc signing is pretty big. It was a great signing for them. He immediately is the best player on their roster.
100%.
So, yeah.
Well, moving on, we do have some new details for the upcoming Overwatch League stage number 2. So we got a lot of cool things coming. We got patch 1.34. Hey, That's the live patch with Baptiste, all the balance changes, the 19 out of the 30 heroes get in touch. That's going to be used in stage number 2. We will have Paris being added to the map pool. They also rearranged the map order. So it now goes Control, Assault, Hybrid, and Escort. And the reason that they did this is just due to the likelihood of draws on Assault. And the way that they have it now is, well, if we had a draw on Assault, you would basically go in to, not that far in the series, and then that 4th game wouldn't be important, basically, because a draw would basically mean if you're up 2-0, hey, you've won the series at this point. So it kind of led to some anticlimactic situations. Looking at the map pool, though, for Control, we got Lijiang Tower, Oasis, Busan, Assault with Paris, Temple of Anubis, Hanamura, Hybrid being Blizzard World, Eichenwald, King's Row, and then Escort, everyone's favorite 8-7 objective score map, Junkertown, Watchpoint Gibraltar, and Rialto. So outside of that, they are adjusting the schedule. Before they were saying, matches are probably going to average out to be 90 minutes. That has not been the case. It's been averaging 105 minutes, so the schedule is going to reflect that.
I am shocked.
Yeah.
Who
would have guessed?
Who would have guessed they went exactly an hour and 30 minutes?
Strange. And again, they did say, hey guys, we're going to have some additional tiebreakers added. What those are, we don't know. We hope to hear more about that soon. But just taking a look at the map pool, patch 1.34, what has you the most excited going into stage number 2?
The new maps, or the map pool, and the change to the map. So, Control, I love all 3 of the Control maps they put out there. Lijiang Tower is fine. I love watching Oasis maps, and Busan, and to this day, Busan is still my favorite map in the game. Favorite map to play in the game. The Assault maps, they're going to be brutal. Very brutal. So Hanamura and Temple of Anubis have both been known to be screwed up. Mm-hmm. With the spawn advantage on point B for both being so ridiculously skewed. It's going to be ugly on those. Paris, I don't know how much Paris map you've played.
You mean outside of murdering bartenders?
Yeah. Paris map sucks. I do not like Paris map. The more I play on it, the less I enjoy it. It's a weird sort of. You're going to see different tactics for this Assault map. On Temple of Anubis and Hanamura, once you lose point A, you just set up a defense on point B. Well, you can't do that on Paris, really, because the flanks are so wide open. You're going to start seeing flanks push farther up, which is going to be very weird. It's going to just be interesting. The hybrid maps, I am excited to see. I've always liked watching Blizzard World and Eichenwald. That should be fun. King's Row is a staple. But you're going to start seeing some more interesting comps, I think, on King's Row and with Junkertown. I think Baptiste is going to be... You're going to see more bunker defenses with Baptiste on King's Row and Junkertown, especially for the escort maps when, you get your Orisa, your Bastion. Well, what goes with those? How about we get an immortality field so they can't kill the Bastion? So it should be fun. I like Rialto. I like Gibraltar. Literally the only map I'm not looking forward to seeing is Paris. And that's the new map. I'm not a fan of it. So I don't know. What's your favorite part of all these?
My favorite part is the fact that, one, we'll get to see actual DPS players playing DPS outside of the Chinese expansion teams. I should kind of reiterate that because, good on Guangzhou, Chengdu, to an extent Shanghai. But that was more early on when they didn't actually have a tank. and not so much lately. Outside of that, I'm actually a pretty big fan of Hanamura. I know some people kind of like roll their eyes on it. I just want to see more May play, and with Hanamura,
Symmetra.
Cool.
You could get some good Symmetra play on Hanamura.
Yeah, we have a couple of maps that kind of have their own tailored meta to them, or potential meta picks in Hanamura. Junkertown, we might see a ton of double sniper. We might see a ton of pirate ship. And Eichenwald tends to bring a lot of dive composition, so I'm happy to see that as well. And of course, Lijiang Tower has always been like my favorite map outside of King's Row. So really across the board, I'm pretty happy with each different map type that we have. But I'm just really curious to see what the pro meta is going to be in stage number 2. And if we thought the Pick'ems was going to be kind of like all over the place in stage 1, same with who would be getting the most fantasy points, I have no idea what to expect in stage number 2. Yeah. I mean, this is going to just be, the first couple of weeks is just going to be kind of all over the place. Maybe this is going to be like the Shock's opportunity to really flex with all of their DPS and just the amount of depth that they have in regards to who they can work into their rotation. Same with New York Excelsior. Not that they need to, since they're kind of undefeated anyway.
Yeah, like if anyone doesn't need to flex more, it's New York Excelsior. They're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Oh god, that team needs to get broken up soon. Somehow, some way, that team needs to. That tank, like Meko, needs to retire. That would do it. They're like, well, you have no off tank, so deal with it. So I don't know. It'll be nice. I will say I actually agree with you on Hanamura. I actually like Hanamura a little because I will say this, between the 3 assault maps with Paris and Hanamura, it's hard to snowball from A to B. Mm-hmm. Paris, it is as well. Temple of Anubis, it's easy. If you get like going with all your ults, it's easy to snowball the Temple of Anubis. But Hanamura and Paris, I think you're going to get less like snowball, minute and a half caps like on Volskaya and stuff like that. So that is definitely something that will be interesting.
Absolutely. Well, anyways, guys, let's go ahead and jump into our main discussion for tonight, which is going to be our Overwatch League Stage 1 playoffs preview. So after all of the tiebreaker shenanigans, after the flubbed coin flips, teams not wanting to play a game, teams wanting to play a game, games not being casted, but games being shoutcasted, all of that, we finally know what our playoff bracket is. And just as a reminder, after the round of 8, which is the quarterfinals, we're going to be reseeded. So with that being said, looking at the schedule, on Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we open with the number 2 seed in the New York Excelsior, going up against the number 7 seed in the Seoul Dynasty. All right, Ed. Okay, flashback. Seoul Dynasty, London Spitfire, the team that Seoul has never beaten ever. Seoul ends up beating them in convincing fashion. Surprisingly, despite having at one point lost 14 consecutive maps to them, getting swept twice, taking London to 2 consecutive map 5s. So it took 5 times for them to beat London Spitfire. It finally happened. Fisher was the answer, I guess, for Seoul to finally get that win, which was monumental for them. Huge confidence boost. Now they have the unfortunate draw of New York Excelsior, who went 7-0, had a perfect stage, as did Vancouver Titans. And you look back, you can't count the preseason of the inaugural season. And this is another team that has a very similar record against the Dynasty, in the fact that Dynasty has never defeated the New York Excelsior. NYXL has swept Dynasty multiple times. Dynasty has brought them to a map 5. So come playoff time, Ed, knowing how strong New York Excelsior has been, and knowing kind of like the emotional roller coaster that the Dynasty have been, what do you think the Dynasty's chances are in this series?
Honestly, better than what people are giving them. The reason I say this is when they faced off against New York last year. First off, we can't take the last year, into account because, okay, let's look at the finals from last year. London didn't make the playoffs. Valiant, the Final Four. The Valiant didn't get a win. Fusion in New York, yes, they made the playoffs. But Seoul is such a different team from last year.
Right.
They're only returning half the people that New York has faced. So the weakest part of the team last year was the tank line. Now it's probably their strongest part. And, they have Fissure to deal with, who still, I think, is the best main tank in the game. Bumper, I think, is a close second. He's just a tad too aggressive. But like compared to Fissure, he's a tad too aggressive, and that's saying something. But Fissure and then Michelle. Like, Michelle is able to go seamlessly from good diva play to very good Sombra play. And that's something that they can throw at New York to possibly, put a hiccup in their plan. How can they deal with the Sombra? Like, I will 100% say this. New York did not play good teams, except for the San Francisco Shock in, stage 1. They didn't. They played Seoul Dynasty in week 3 and beat them. That was a different team. Like, the Seoul Dynasty from like week 3 to week 5, they looked night and day different. And I think it was when they played the Justice that Fissure and Michelle kind of took that as a sign and really just stepped up their game. Now, with all this said, do I think Seoul's going to win? No. But, like, I'd give them a 25-30% chance of winning. I think I would not be completely shocked if they won 3-2. It's just one of those things where it could happen. Again, probably not. But I'm hopeful. It will take a phenomenal Fissure game. Fissure needs to have the best game he's ever had for them to win this game. So, I don't know. I still think New York will win 3-1, but I would not be surprised if Seoul actually pulled it off. How about you?
I wish I could be really optimistic here. I can't be. So, lightning struck once, when Dynasty beat Spitfire. It's not going to strike twice. I do not see it in the cards. The stars are not aligned. I don't see it happening because you look at everything New York has done. And, you brought up Sombra play. Meko basically was at the forefront of the Sombra play outside of, like, Guard and Michelle. And they did that early on. And then they transitioned aimlessly to run in 3-3 better than a vast majority of the teams out there outside of Vancouver, obviously being the other one. And across the board, we've just seen so much more consistency from New York Excelsior. I can't really pinpoint the weakness on that team, whereas I can't necessarily say the same thing about the Dynasty. If I had to put a percentage on it, I would probably say this is 90-10 in favor of New York. I am expecting this to go 3-0. And it's going to be an early exit. It's like, hey, Seoul, congrats. You finally made it to the playoffs. You're facing an undefeated team. There's the door.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm just a little bit more hopeful than you, but you've been hurt a lot by them.
This is what I like to call tempering expectations.
Yeah, because you've gotten your hopes up before, but yeah, they've been dashed.
But you know what the great thing is, Ed? The fact that I have 2 chances. because my other dads are also in the playoffs. So that being said, I think NYXL 3-0, which would be both of us favoring New York Excelsior. So moving on, the second quarterfinal game on Thursday, this one at 8 p.m. Pacific time, will feature the top seed in the Vancouver Titans going up against the team that squeaked their way into the playoffs in that 8th spot, the Boston Uprising. Okay, so we have the Feeden Reinhardt going up against another aggro Reinhardt. And, Titans across the board been looking pretty good. They seem to struggle against DPS-heavy compositions, which was definitely highlighted in that Chengdu Hunter series earlier in the stage. And, Boston, a lot of their play revolves around fusions. So looking at this one, Ed, what are you expecting to happen with this series? What would you think the map score is going to be in this one?
You know what? I'll just go with it, 4-0.
Well, 3-0, because it's...
Oh, 3-0, sorry. 3-0. I'm used to the 4. Basically, Vancouver's going to roll them. Actually, all right, quick question for you. In the best of 3, if they get 2-0, do they stop? Because what would be the point of the third map? It has no effect on the season playoffs, they said. You would think that they'd stop after 2 if they go up 2-0 to save on time.
Well, it's a best of 5. You have to win 3 maps.
Oh, okay. See, you just said best of 3. And now you're saying best.
No, it's first to 3. Did I say best of 3?
Yes.
Well, it's first to 3. So it's
first
best
to 3, best of 5.
It's best of 5 in the quarterfinals, and then best of 7 beyond.
Okay, so if they went up 3-0, they call it.
So say they take the first couple of maps, and then they draw. They still win that series.
Yeah, and then they don't play the remaining 2 maps. I'm assuming. So beyond that, so Vancouver, I think is just going to roll over them. I don't have a lot of faith in Boston. I think Fusions, yes, he is the key to the Boston Uprising team, but I don't think that's where it's going to be won for Vancouver. I'm looking more at the Siomitsu versus Color Hex, the Zarya battle. That Color Hex has not impressed me on his Zarya. He just seems sloppy when it comes to it, and Siomitsu is one of the best Zaryas in the game right now. So I think that is where it's going to kind of come into play. In that, it's just Vancouver. Yes, they had a hiccup versus a 4 DPS lineup of the Chengdu Hunters. Well, right. Boston's not going to run 4 DPS. They have 2 DPS on their team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can't actually play 4 DPS or a heavy DPS team. So they're going to be running 3-3. And if it's 3-3 versus 3-3, Vancouver's just going to roll over them. It's a nice story that Boston was able to get in. Thank you. You got in over Dallas. You got in over Houston. Thank you for making our lives so much easier in regards to Bob and Julian and Spider.
And Mel.
But yeah, I don't see them standing a chance. Like, I don't even give them a 5% chance of winning. So, I don't know. What about you?
Well, for starters, just quickly going back, I know I misspoke. So, I'm assuming that it's using the similar thing with the 4 maps, and then it's going to control with the 5th. So if they win the first 2 and then they draw, they still have to play that map forward to win it, since you have to take 3 maps altogether.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if it's best of 5 and they go up 3-0, they win the first 3 maps.
Right.
Would they end it?
Yeah.
They would.
The series would be won at that point.
The series would be won, and there's no point in playing it because the maps don't matter for the playoffs. Okay. That's one thing I was just trying to make sure.
Right. So for me, Boston has been a curious case, but no matter if it was Boston getting the last seed, Dallas getting the last seed, Houston getting the last seed, really anyone, I wouldn't pick them over Titans or Excelsior, whoever was going to be top or second seed in this case. Boston are going to look to get aggressive, and that's just playing right into the Titans' hand. They're going to be able to expose Fusions, and while Fusions has come up pretty big, his shot calling has been exceptional. You look at some of the other pieces, and I feel like this is really going to unravel between the Zarya play. I feel like Aim God and Twilight are pretty close in regards to Zenyatta play altogether, stat-wise. And Aim God's really been popping off. So if Boston's going to find a way to win, it's probably going to be off of first picks from Aim God. But outside of that, I don't give Boston a very good chance in this series. Titans have just looked too good. And at the end of the day, I want to see Titans face Excelsior because really that's the match that everyone wants to see. And I don't want to have to wait till stage number 4 in order to see that happen. So if I was to put percentages on it,
wait, are they not playing till stage 4?
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's
the regular
kind of insane.
Yeah. But if I were to put percentages on it, I would say probably 98-2 in favor of the Titans. I think this is going to be a 3-0 for Vancouver, and hopefully that'll set up the eventual showdown for the finals against New York Excelsior. So moving on to Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we open up with the 4 seed Philadelphia Fusion going up against the 5th seed in Atlanta Reign. All right, Ed, these are two teams who have been so up and down, it's very hard to get a read on them. You have Philadelphia, who at one point didn't have Boombox. They had Elk playing Flexiport. They look terrible. They have dropped series and maps against really bad teams. They beaten really good teams. Atlanta's been a fairly good team, but they've lost a lot of the momentum that they had. And going into the playoffs, that's not what you want to see happening. So what do you make of this match? Because this is one of them that I keep flipping back and forth with.
Yeah, it's Atlanta before week 5. I would have probably gone Atlanta all the way.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Atlanta in both their matches week 5 were bad. Like, they did not look good. The team is just in kind of disarray. And like you said, momentum actually counts for something when going into the playoffs. Fusion have been playing fairly well. They've been steady Eddie. They've just kind of like, once they got Boombox back and they didn't have to play Elk on, Zenyatta, they've just been steady. Yeah, EQO's been playing well. Carpe's Carpe. Neptuno and Boombox are playing well. Poco's playing okay. Sato, not so much. But, it's Atlanta. I give the advantage to the Fusion. I think the Fusion will win this. The only chance in hell Atlanta has is if they go full-on Chengdu Hunters. If they go full-on, they're going to buck the meta, and they're going to play weird comps. They're going to try and do complete anti-GOATs type of situations. And if they do that, they have a chance. But if they try and go up against Fusion, 3 GOATs versus GOATs, I don't think Atlanta will win. And I think part of it is also that Atlanta thinks that they have to run GOATs, and then the team is just depressed by running that. And their play style affects, shows it. Like, when they run GOATs, they just don't look like the same team. So I'm giving this to Fusion. These 2 matches on Friday are the 2 closest matches. I'll probably say 60%, 60-40. The Fusion will win this one. I think it will be close. It could go either way. It could be the flip of a coin. but but yeah, I still think Fusion are gonna take it because Atlanta is just, God, they look so bad. So how about you? What do you think?
All right, this is the one I always have the toughest thing with. I mean, I feel like the other one are a little bit more cut and dry. Philly, to me, has always just kind of been this weird entity where they'll beat the best teams in the league and look terrible against the worst teams in the league. And I really don't know which Philadelphia is going to show up. But if I'm going to bank on anything, it's the fact that this one is going to go 5 maps. And I'm going to give it to Philadelphia on one thing alone. And that is, well, actually, it's only 2 things, but they coincide with one another. One, you had the playoff experience of Philadelphia Fusion, which inherently gives them a buffer. It's like they become Philly 2.0 all of a sudden, and then they just kind of reach that final form, so to speak, when they reach the playoffs. So that being said, I don't have like the most confidence in Philadelphia. If I was to put a percentage on it, this is probably going to be more 55-45 in favor of Philadelphia. My major concern, though, is with Philadelphia, the Reinhardt play. Sato has not looked good on that role, and this is a team that seems to want to rely on running a lot of Winston, which is his better hero, but that also leaves him very susceptible in the current meta, because Winston Goats isn't always the most optimal, 3-3 composition. And that could definitely be exposed by Atlanta. That being said, Atlanta's kind of been known for just throwing these meta-breaking looks at teams. And stylistically, that could shut Philadelphia down. The problem with that, though, is with Philadelphia, that's a team that has the DPS flexibility to try to counter comp or counter DPS, however you want to put it. And I feel like even with that, Philadelphia is going to have a deeper hero pool in that regard, because you have Carpe and Ikiwo, who have been known to be 2 of the better flex DPS or hit scan specialists in the league. And I don't think Atlanta, for as good as they have looked on DPS, are going to be able to match up to them in that regard. So I'm expecting Philly to come out ahead 3-2 in this series, but it should be very close. So it's going to be really a case of stylistically how they're going to match up. If Atlanta is going to try to run straight 3-3 against them, it might be pretty close just because that's a little bit more chaotic on both sides. But if Atlanta tries to just run DPS comps and Philly are just going to say, hey, we can do this too, I think Philly will come out on top. So I'm going to Philly, which would lead us to the final quarterfinal match on Friday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. You have the 3 seed in the Toronto Defiant going up against the 6 seed in the San Francisco Shock. So Defiant really been the surprise team this stage. A team that we kind of had like mid-table expectations for, really have surpassed them, and it's been backed by Ivy Zarya play. Their Zenyatta play has been exceptional with Neko back in. And you have the Shock, who had the toughest strength of schedule, who still managed to make it to the playoffs, which is very telling of how good this team is, who are, built primarily around Super, who has been putting in better stats than what any of us would have expected. So do you favor, kind of like the quirkiness of Defiant, or do you think Shock's battle test in stage 1 is going to kind of propel them to the forefront in this match?
All right, so everyone knows that I'm not the biggest Fusion fan. Okay, I haven't been in season 1. I have a new team that I'm not a big fan of, and that is the Toronto Defiant. And it's semi-justified. Like, if you look at what the Toronto Defiant have actually done in stage 1, it's not actually that impressive. Like, all right, they have one quality win, and that is against the Boston Uprising. Otherwise, they have lost to every other team that is in the top 10. They've beaten up on the Spark, the Outlaws. They did beat the Chengdu Hunters. It's just one of those things where you got to look at the quality of wins. Like, they played Atlanta and they played New York. They lost to both of them 3-1. They beat the LA Valiant. Well, everyone beat the LA Valiant. I am not sold on Toronto Defiant as being the number 3 team. The Shock, on the other hand, are coming in with the toughest schedule out of anyone, I think, in the Overwatch League for Stage 1. And they came in there. I mean, look at our rankings. Like, our rankings have the Shock, at 4?
Right.
And that is a very good place for them, knowing who they've played and who they've lost to and who they've beaten. The Shock are probably the 3rd best team, in my mind, in the league. They have one of the top Zarya players in Sinatra. They have probably one of the top 3 Zenyatta players. Moth is... Nobody talks about Moth.
Yeah, he's criminally underrated for what he does on this team.
Yeah, Moth is crucial to this team. He's so good, and nobody talks about him because how good Violet's been played, how good Sinatra's been played. Rascal on Baguette has been very pleasant surprise. They had, Architect on there, and they're throwing Rascal in there now, so that works. Super, like you said, has been playing better. So I'm going with, I don't even know if I want to call this an upset. Yes, it's technically an upset that the Shock. Yeah, it's upset by seed, not upset by skill. The Shock are the 3rd best team in Stage 1. So I'm going with the Shock. I'm going probably... I don't think it's going to go to 5 maps.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a 3-1 type of situation. I can't see the Shock not winning in this one. I just see them popping off, and they could come in and just completely screw with people too. Because they're a team that could come in and be like, we're going to run 4 DPS like the Chengdu Hunters for a map. Map 1. They come in and they're not map 1, because everyone knows the rosters for map 1 beforehand. Map 2, you sub in, you throw in, hey, here's Rascal, Sinatra, Striker, and Baby Bay coming in. Be like, wait, what? What are they doing? How do we counter this? And Choyobin has been great for them. This team is a very good team. So I'd say I'd give them a 75% chance of winning this one as the underdog. So I don't know. What about you?
I was actually going to use those percentages as well. I do favor the Shock. I don't think this is going to be an upset, regardless of what the seeds may say. And you look at the teams that the Shock have faced, and even against the better record teams in the league, they've been putting up a very tough front. So they've not been an easy test, and they've, we were kind of curious to see, I know the expectations from the community for the Shock were relatively high compared to a majority of the league, and a question mark for us was always kind of just built around, well, how is their main tank going to perform on this roster? They haven't really been playing Smurf all that much. It's primarily just been Super on the roll, and he's been 3rd, 4th in a lot of the key Reinhardt statistics throughout the league, which is tremendous for, kind of what we kind of expected from him. And the Shock, I think from top to bottom outside of New York, probably has the most amount of depth to that roster. So when I'm looking at this, I'm expecting it to be 3-1. I think the Shock are going to win. Toronto has looked good, but I feel like a lot of their wins kind of have like an asterisk next to them, you know? So it doesn't really bode well for my confidence in that team. But that being said, Defiant have definitely surpassed expectations. And I do think they will take at least one map, but the Shock are going to come out ahead. So with that being said, with the reseed, since I know you and I were both on the same page, that would give us potential matches for the semi. So we would have Vancouver Titans, who would hold that top seed, going against the lowest advancing seed, which in this case is the San Francisco Shock, which will leave us with New York Excelsior and Philadelphia Fusion. So I know we're kind of getting close to 2 hours already, so I want to get your thoughts on who would win those two semifinal games to reach the grand finals.
Well, New York would beat Philly. The Vancouver San Francisco game will be close. I think it would. I would have to give the benefit to Vancouver in that one. But honestly, like we talked about how Bumper is one of the best main tanks. Bumper is the one who would also lose them this match.
Let me just link shatter.
Yeah, like I mean, the thing is, even Titan fans will agree with that. Bumper can lose you a game,
but him dying first doesn't necessarily lead to a lost fight.
Yeah, but like he can easily lose them the game. So Bumper has to be a little less Bumper to secure the win. I mean, I have to predict the matchup that everyone is predicting, you know, in Vancouver versus New York Excelsior, live on ABC. I don't know. What do you think? I have a sneaking suspicion we might be fairly similar on this.
So in a best of 7 series, I give Titans 4-2 in that series, and I if I'm given like a percentage chance of winning, you know, probably like 70-30 for Titans, maybe a little bit higher. I'd probably say 75-25 in favor of Titans. NMXL Fusion would be a really fun series.
That's the one that would be on ABC, I guarantee it. Because there's only going to be one on ABC. If New York is playing Philly, they're in that over Vancouver versus San Francisco.
And if you look at it too, like based on what the other schedule is, they kind of have like the higher seed playing in the second game. So that would mean that, you know, NMXL Fusion would be the 12th.
But there's wiggle room there, like, because it's not actually listed.
Yeah, and, you know, the reason why ABC has that 30 minutes buffer time is because it's Philadelphia, and they would go to potentially 5 maps, or 7 maps, which in this case, I don't think would happen because they're facing New York.
Could they somehow get an 8th map? I don't know. I feel if anyone could get the elusive 8th map out of a best of 7, the Fusion could.
Well, neither one of them are Runaway or Condu Panthera. This is an Apex. I don't think that's going to happen. But with NYXL Fusion, I think NYXL would probably take that one 4-1. So I'll say, you know, 85-15 in favor of New York. So with that being said, that would lead into the finals. Again, best of 7, live Sunday, 12 p.m. Pacific time, only on ABC. Well, also, you know, elsewhere, but, you know, tune in to ABC because, you know, we got to see those TV ratings so we can further expand television stuff for the Overwatch League. So in a best of 7 series, in our scenario, that would lead to Vancouver Titans, the top seed with a better map differential, also 7-0, going up against the New York Excelsior. So at the end of the day, Ed, who do you see walking out on top of the Stage 1 finals?
Well, watching it live on ABC, I have to go Homer. I'm gonna go Vancouver. It's one of those things where it's a coin flip. Like I know we've been saying that this is an actual coin flip between Vancouver and New York. I think New York probably has a better team, but nobody in the Overwatch League can compare with the teamwork that the Vancouver Titans have. Like, the team synergy for Vancouver is why they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
New York has better skill, I think. Like, all around, they have more skill than anyone, but they don't have the teamwork that the Vancouver Titans do. So, like, I mean, like, you have Nene coming in. Well, Nene is just started in stage 1 with them. Like, you know, you lose Arc, who was your support for all of last year, you know. So I'm going with Vancouver, I'm going with teamwork. They're going to run away with it.
Overused.
I'm still going to say it, though.
I know. Yeah, I mean, it's never going to stop you from saying something. I mean, most things don't anyway.
Yeah, I don't really have a filter. I'm okay with it, though.
So, for me, you know, I have to vote with my head and not my heart. You know, my heart wants one thing, but my mind is telling me something completely different. That being said, I really want Vancouver to win this because at the end of the day, this would be the ultimate justification of runaway in the Overwatch League. Because you always have those little birdies chirping in the background that are like, oh, you know, Runaway isn't Overwatch League ready. They're overhyped. They're not as good as everyone thinks they are. They're the top seed right now, and it's for good reason. But the problem that I have is when you compare these two teams, you have Vancouver, who is known for that aggressive front line, which I love, but I also am really worried about. It's this constant battle of shakiness where there are going to be times where it's going to pay off well, and there's going to be times where it just bites them in the ass. And when you look at New York, this is a team that plays a little bit more passive. They're more reactive with whatever is being thrown at them. They've shown that flexibility to probably a greater extent compared to Vancouver, although we do know Vancouver is flexible. But I just feel like knowing New York's play style, the way that Vancouver plays fits too much into their hand, where they'll be able to expose what weaknesses they do have. So if I'm given like a map score, this is a tough one. You know, I feel like Vancouver probably could bring it all 7. I mean, they kind of did that with Condu Panthera, you know, in Apex. I feel like this one's going to close out at 6, so I think New York is going to take it 4-2. But the thing I am most intrigued by is comparing Nene and Seaman Su, because they have by far been my favorite Zarya to watch throughout this stage. And I feel like statistically, this might be the most even Zarya play that we're going to see all season long. So I'm really anxious to see how that's going to play out. But I think New York is going to take it. And, you know, history might contradict that just because of what London did in stage 1. But I don't think everything's going to play out the same. So
yeah. Like, the likelihood of what we just predicted happening is slim to none. Like, let's be real. Like, it's March Madness season. There's a reason. What is it? Warren Buffett is offering people $1 million a year for the rest of their lives if they just get the Sweet 16 predicted correctly. Like, there's no way you can predict it correct.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously with fewer matches, there are going to be people, but there's always going to be an upset. There's always, like, in the shock versus defiant game, well, half the people are going to pick one, half the people are going to pick the other. Well, after that match, half the people are wrong.
Yeah, it's the same with Fusion Rate. I mean, that's another one. Like, those last two are the ones that everyone keeps flipping between.
Yeah, and I mean, if Fusion beat New York Excelsior in the second round, okay, you know, Fusion's not a bad team. It's not like it's a, we shocked the world and took down the New York Excelsior. You know, same for, you know, Shock taking down the Titans. Like, it's not going to, you know, shock the world if they did that. So, like, we're predicting the most likely outcome, but it could go any which way. And I love that.
Absolutely. So just as a reminder for Pick'ems this week, they are doing the playoffs. I know they're definitely doing a round of 8. Outside of that, I'm not too sure on, just because that would be kind of like on the fly and be like multiple updates. But for Fantasy Overwatch League, there's no like traditional fantasy this week, so no unlimited drafts, no standard leagues, anything like that. So please keep that in mind. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and close out the show for tonight. If you guys want to help us out, you know, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for, you know, just constructive criticism, ways how we can improve the show. And Ed, I know we got a couple of reviews, so why don't you go ahead and read those off?
All right. Well, the first one is a 5-star review from Danta232. So, a listener from Australia. Loving the content. It's awesome having this resource to hear about the Overwatch League in depth. It's making my weekend viewing experience much better with the greater knowledge of players and strats. Keep it coming. This is a review probably aimed more towards Totem and less towards me. But I'll take it either way. And then we also got a 5-star iTunes review from Kredlinski from the UK. Saying, enjoy listening to the show while I'm at work. Makes the nights go much faster. The length of the podcast is just enough. Keep up the good work. Well, you know what? I thank you for saying the length of the podcast is good enough, because you know what? Totem has to reel me in sometimes. I think when we first started this, like when I first took over in episode 101, I think we were aiming for an hour. Hour and a half.
Yeah, 90 minutes.
90 minutes. And then it's like, hey, it's a short episode if we keep it under 120 minutes. So, yeah, he really has to reel me in. But, you know, I know some people out there like the long episodes. So thank you both for the 5-star reviews. Go leave us 5-star reviews. You know, tell me how much I'm wrong about a lot of things. Mainly about Canada or your team that I offended. Probably, I'm surprised we haven't got one about me and my hatred of the Fusion. Like, that's one that surprised me.
If you keep mentioning it, eventually it's going to happen.
I mean, now it's going to be Toronto Defiant.
Probably.
Yeah, so.
I mean, someone that was in our Twitch chat earlier, one of our new followers, was a Toronto Defiant fan.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Well, anyways, guys, if you were looking for additional content to consume, you can always check out Overwatch Recall, which is our listen of Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League podcast over on our website. And then every Sunday night, we release the episodic listings in the weekly Recall. And of course, you can find it on our website, owlnshow.com/OWRecall. If you'd like to support us further, you can do so by checking out our Patreon page. So, this helps our network grow, and all support goes directly into the shows that we produce. We have tiers starting at just $1 a month, and you can find more information on patreon.com/OWL network. And with that, we have been kind of tweaking the rewards a little bit. So these are kind of subject to change, but we're trying out new things. Let us know what you guys like, what you would like to see, and we'll do our best to accommodate those here in the future. But Ed, we have so many ways how our listeners and viewers can get a hold of us. So why don't you let them know how they can do that?
All right. Well, you can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. You can reach us on Twitter at @hndoverwatch. We do have a website that is www.owlnshow.com. We are on YouTube, where we release our weekly power ranking videos, and Spider releases some videos, bad jokes and all, at youtube.com/c/Overwatch League Network. We do have a Discord, and that's discord.me/OWLN show. We are streaming live presently on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. We are a Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly because, well, we have a lot of podcasts. So Mondays, we have the Overwatch League Network airing at 7 p.m. Pacific. On Tuesdays, we have our fantasy OWL show, OWL by the Numbers, at 6 p.m. Pacific.
Except next week, we're taking a week off.
We're taking a week off. Well, because there's no Overwatch League, so no fantasy Overwatch League. And then this show, Heroes Never Die, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams happen from time to time.
Optional. Yeah.
Optional Thursdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Totem went over the patreon.com/OWL network. So go over there. Donate to us if you can. Thank you to Blaze and Bob, Brandon, Gabby, helping our network grow. You can contact me personally on Twitter at Edanar, EDANAR, Overwatch. Ask me questions, tell me I'm stupid, stuff like that. Totem, where can they reach you?
Well, just make sure, like, when you're tweeting Ed that, if you're a Fuchsia fan, Defiant fan, Outlaws fan, send all direct messages to him.
Fuel. Don't forget Fuel.
Oh, yeah, Fuel too. If they could, try to find their way out of whatever corner they're currently crying in still after not making the playoffs. As the only 4-3 team not to make the playoffs. But as for myself, you definitely can find me on Twitter at Totally_DrunkCTR. But with that being said, guys, we are going to go ahead and get the heck out of here. Again, you've been listening to Heroes Never Die. This has been episode 152. I've been your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as always, by Edanar. And we will see you guys back next week. Have a good night.
Have a good one.